Pressure of what?
Of having lost 2 games.
Pressure is millions of people in the world, parents, no money to buy food for their children. That's pressure, not in football. This is nothing against Sir Alex. I want to tell you one thing. After the game, after the press conference, we were together in my office. We laugh, we spoke, we speak, we drank, and to be fair, when we go to Man United, I will bring a very good bottle of wine, because the wine we drank was very bad, and he was complaining. Enough to be here, but the decision was made. Chelsea looked forward, I looked forward, they move on, I move on. I keep winning important things. They keep winning something. They won an FA Cup.
First coach to spend $1 billion in transfers, 25 major honours, regarded as one of the greatest managers of the last 2 decades. So where did it all go wrong for the self-proclaimed special one? From being the first name on the list for a club looking for a new manager, to now being a high-risk appointment. Jose used to guarantee success. Now the only thing he can guarantee is in-house drama, from the boardroom staff to the tea lady. But how did we get here? Let's start from the beginning, because it wasn't all player shaming and eye pokes. Jose started off as a player in the Portuguese pyramid system, which is similar to reserve team football, in which he was unsuccessful. He first got his feet wet into coaching, being an interpreter for Sir Bobby Robson at Sporting and Porto. Then gained some success following Robson as his assistant at Barcelona, and then with his successor, Louis van Gaal. He then impressed as a manager with brief spells at Benfica and União de Lira. Sorry if I butchered the name. I think I did. Then he became Porto manager in 2002. This is where he put respect on his name. At Porto, he won the League Cup, and the UEFA Cup in his first season. In his second season, he retained the league and won the big one, the Champions League, which was Porto's first European Cup since 1987. His rise would continue as his success in Portugal would gain him an opportunity in England to join Chelsea in 2004. Remember, Chelsea had just been bought by billionaire Roman Abramovich, and he was ready to splash the cash. So any signings Mourinho needed, he got. This is where the narcissist quote started, as he said,
"We have top players, and I'm sorry, I'm a bit arrogant, we have a top manager. Porto to win the Champions League has to beat Partizan Belgrade, Real Madrid, Marseille, Olympique Lyon, Manchester United. Again, please don't call me arrogant, because what I'm saying is true. I'm European champion, so I'm not one of the bottle. I think I'm a special one.
He spent in excess of 70 million in his first season, and he won the league and the League Cup, which was Chelsea's first title in 50 years, breaking records in the process of most points, 95, and fewest goals conceded, 15. In his second season, he won the league, again making it 4 league titles in a row, for him going back-to-back with 2 different clubs. Now in his third season, cracks began to show. His relationship with Abramovich was starting to get shaky. Shevchenko came in, who was never Mourinho's signing. It was an Abramovich signing. Directors of football were coming in against Jose's wishes. However, he still won the League Cup and the FA Cup, meaning he had now won every domestic trophy possible in his first 3 years at the club. Now the next season, despite breaking Liverpool's record of 64 consecutive games at home without defeat, on the 20th of September 2007, the relationship at the club had hit boiling point, and he had left by mutual consent. He left being Chelsea's most successful manager, winning 6 trophies in 3 years. So then he takes a season off, plays with the Mezzes for a bit, then comes back in June 2008. He gets appointed as manager of Inter Milan. He brought his backroom staff that he'd worked with previously at Porto and Chelsea. Quick fact, he only spoke Italian in his first press conference, claiming that he had learned the language in 3 weeks. 'Cause
I think I'm a special one.
In that transfer window, he bought 3 players, Montari, Quaresma, and Mancini. In his first season, he won the Supercoppa Italiana, which is our version of the Charity Shield, and he won the league. This was a controversial season as Mourinho didn't do well in the Champions League, and this was the first time Mourinho would get backlash from the fans. The controversy continued. In the season, Mourinho would insult a lot of the rivals and the Italian media, accusing them of intellectual prostitution on their behalf. Now his success is something you can't doubt, and he's starting to use it in a way to belittle other managers and be dismissive of any constructive criticism. But I digress. So at the end of that season, on July 2009, Jose hinted for the first time about being Man United manager. He said, "I would consider going to Manchester United, but United have to consider if they want me to succeed Sir Alex Ferguson. If they do, then of course." But back to Inter Milan. So in his second season, Mourinho signed Diego Milito, who was the second highest goal scorer of the previous season, Thiago Motta, Wesley Sneijder, and Samuel Eto'o. His beefs at the start of the season would continue with spats with national team coach, who at the time was Marcelo Lippi, and Fabio Cannavaro. This season would probably be his most successful of his career. He won the treble, the domestic 2 titles, and then the Champions League. But it was the Champions League that would become a precursor to his next move in management. See, the final was at the Bernabeu. Inter Milan beat Barcelona in the semi-finals. He then took shots at Barcelona fans, saying they were obsessed with winning the title in their rival's backyard. This impressed the bosses at Real Madrid. The day after winning the Champions League, Jose said he was sad, as for almost sure it's his last game with Inter. He then added, "If you don't coach Real Madrid, you'll always have a gap in your career." After days of discussions, and a record-breaking compensation package was agreed. On the 28th of May 2010, he was appointed the first-team coach and sporting director of Real Madrid. In his first season, he bought Sami Khedira, Mesut Ozil, Ricardo Carvalho, and Argentinian winger Angel Di Maria. Now, after a slow start, a lot of goals and results followed. However, in his first Clásico, 29th of November 2010, they got beat 5-0 at the Nou Camp, with the Real Madrid director, Florentino Perez, regarding it as its worst game in the history of Real Madrid. Sporting director Jorge Valdano also criticised Mourinho for his inability to bring a major correction to the game and not leaving his bench for the majority of the match. This season, Mourinho won the Copa del Rey, which ended their 18-year drought in the competition. In his second season, he reached the semi-finals of the Champions League but won the league title, breaking records in most games won, most away wins, most points obtained in any of the top 4 European leagues, most goals scored, and highest goal difference. Okay, so in his third season, a lot of the cracks started to show again. But I'm going to go through the positive first. Plus, by now, he had just signed a new 4-year deal. He won the 2012 Supercoppa dell'Esparia, which is our version of the Charity Shield. Now, by winning this, Mourinho had won every domestic title available for a manager in the Spanish top division within 2 years. He became the first manager in history to win every domestic title, the League, Championship, Cup, Super Cup, and League Cup, if available in 4 European leagues. Quite impressive, right? But that start of the season fact would be his only highlight. See, he had issues with club captain Iker Casillas and senior players Sergio Ramos and Cristiano Ronaldo, who he said of, and I quote, "Maybe he thinks he knows everything, that a coach cannot improve him anymore," implying he could not take in constructive criticism. I wonder who else has that same issue. How ironic, but I digress. He had continuous clashes with journalists and Real officials. Following the 2013 Cup del Rey loss to Atletico Madrid on May 17th, Mourinho called 2012-2013 season the worst of my career. 3 days later, the Real Madrid president Florentino Perez announced that Mourinho would leave the club at the end of the season by mutual agreement, only a year after signing a contract extension up until 2016. So, the 20th of May 2013, he was a free agent. By the 3rd of June, he was appointed as Chelsea's new manager for the second time. Remember, he was loved by the fans and loved by the club. It was only his issues with Roman Abramovich that caused his departure. But their issues seemed to be resolved, so the return did make sense at the time. In his first season, he finished 3rd in the Premier League and got to the semi-finals of the Champions League. But there was no pressure on Mourinho, and he did consistently say throughout the season that this was a transitional season. In his second season, he bought Diego Costa, Cesc Fabregas, and Thibaut Courtois. He beat Tottenham 2-0 to win the League Cup, but he got knocked out of the Champions League by PSG. However, Chelsea won the league with 3 games to spare, and Mourinho was named Premiership Manager of the season, with Chelsea losing only 3 games all season. Now in his 3rd season, like Real Madrid, he had extended his deal at the club to another 4 years. I remember this season, and in my opinion, this whole season was derailed on the 8th of August when Mourinho criticised the physio, Ivo Canero, for coming out onto the pitch when Hazard was injured, even though the referee had summoned twice for the physios to come on. Words were exchanged, and the 2 physios were not present for the next game. This situation was much more detailed, skimming over the edges here, but I think Ivo did get along with a lot of the players and they disagreed with Mourinho's actions, which led to Mourinho losing the dressing room. From that point, the team never recovered, and Ivo did leave and win an out-of-court settlement. But as for Chelsea, on December 17th, 2015, after losing 9 of 16 Premier League matches, Chelsea announced that they were parting company with Mourinho by mutual consent. The club went on to state, the club wishes to make clear, Jose leaves us in good terms and will always remain a much loved, respected and significant figure at the club. So he relaxes again for a few months, plays with the missus, and then on 7th of August, Mourinho signed a 4-year deal to become Manchester United manager. But remember, the self-proclaimed special one star power didn't shine as bright as it once used to. His last 2 appointments had ended in disaster compared to his previous jobs where he left on his own terms. His inability to compromise would now leave him unable to keep not only the fan base but a dressing room from being divided. Plus his style and tactics were the total opposite to the Man United way. But that was the gamble, and Jose won everywhere he went. But this Man United team were a long way away from the finished article. This is a job I'm sure he knew was his biggest challenge to date. In his first season he bought Eric Bailly, Paul Pogba, Zlatan Ibrahimovic and Henrik Mkhitaryan. So it started off well. He won the FA Community Shield by beating Leicester 2-1. He did win the Europa League, qualifying Manchester United into the Champions League the following season in his first year. Now even with it being somewhat a successful year, the fans were divided as the style of play was not what they were used to. It seemed like a style set up not to lose than the all-out attack that had run through the club's history. It was almost like Mourinho didn't believe in his players enough to let him attack freely. Games of note were the Liverpool game at Anfield, where Liverpool were vulnerable at the time. Mourinho set up the team like they were happy with a draw or to win through luck of a set piece. I did leave that game thinking, is this how we're going to play against the top sides? This can't continue. The team would only play good for 45 minutes of a game and would only attack with intent when they conceded. It was a lackluster season. Yes, the Europa League win was good, but none of the teams that Man United played were threatening. But it was the first season and the fans knew it was a rebuilding process. In his second season, he bought Victor Lindelof, a Swedish up-and-coming central defender in the Portuguese league, Romelu Lukaku, a Belgian striker who had flaws in his game but guaranteed goals, and Nemanja Matic, a Serbian defensive midfielder who Jose had previously worked and won with at Chelsea. So in this season, the fans wanted to see progression. If they were not going to get to play the traditional way, then okay, but they wanted to see results for that trade. But Mourinho's second season only further divided the players and the fans alike. This season would see United finish runners-up in the FA Cup with a lackluster performance, getting beat by his former club Chelsea and finishing second in the league. Now Mourinho would go on to brag about this being the club's highest position since Ferguson, but the fans were not impressed as they were 19 points behind the leader City, who were, at the time, and still are playing amazing football, which further divided the fan opinion, as United were not close to competing in major honours to go along with the poor performances. The gamble was not playing off. Mourinho would also have feuds with fan favourites Paul Pogba and Anthony Martial, which again would divide the fan base. The mess that was the Alexis Sanchez deal, which impacted the team in a negative way for many reasons, which I done a video on. Check that out, it's on my channel. Man United will also go to a new low as other fans of club will call them part of the Bus United, which is unheard of in its history. Plus going out to a poor Seville team in the Champions League should have been the straw that broke the camel's back. But the board continued to keep him and the club extended his contract halfway through the second season. Now going into the summer before his third season, Mourinho would publicly state he could not achieve what he wanted to with the defence he had, further alienating himself from the squad. Plus he had bought a defender in Lindelof the season before and rarely played him, and Eric Bailly the season before that, who he had also fell out with. There were rumours circulating that Mourinho was willing to use fan favourite Anthony Martial as a trade for much older players like Willian and Ivan Perisic, which was shut down by the board. The board lost trust in Mourinho's spending, so they were reluctant to back him. Mourinho only signed Fred and Diego Dalot. Fans were not happy as the two signings were not enough to close the 19-point gap that City had won by the previous season. Only naive fans had faith in Mourinho at this point, and it seemed like only the board never saw the end was near, especially knowing how it ended for his last two clubs in similar patterns. So as the season started, Man United would go on to their worst start of a season for 28 years, including 2 losses out of the first 3 opening games. His relationship with Man United's best midfielder, Paul Pogba, had totally broken down, with him now not even being in the starting lineup and him leaving him on the bench. He would openly criticise players after games. His words would increasingly get more media attention as it seemed like he knew the end was coming and he was trying to fast track the process. As he knew he had just signed a new contract at Man United and they would have had to spend rumoured to be around 20 million if they were to sack him prematurely. He wasn't playing Fred, who had spent 50 million on the summer before. He would constantly change the lineup, so partnerships were never formed, and it would be a mess all round. And again, this had divided the fan base between Mourinho inners and outers. There were strong rumours around the club that Mourinho would be sacked no matter what the result was against Newcastle on 6th of October. But due to a get the violent speech out from Gary Neville, the club never pushed the button, and things went from bad to worse. The Champions League at home to Juventus, we were 1-0 down, and Mourinho sat on the bench emotionless and never made any tactical changes or substitutions, and it was almost like he was okay with that being a result. But the final straw was the loss to arch-rivals Liverpool, 3-1 at Anfield. But it wasn't the loss, it was the way they lost. They at no point went out to win. They were set out to draw, and once Liverpool went ahead, there was still no urgency for the team to score. Plus he had left Pogba on the bench and never brought him on. Pogba, a World Cup winner and arguably the best midfielder in the stadium. By this point the board had had enough, and they were left with no choice. And 2 days after that defeat, on the 18th of December 2018, José Mourinho was sacked as Manchester United manager. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer took charge, and we all know what happened from there. So where did it all go wrong for him? Well, I'm going to give 5 reasons why Jose failed at Man United. Let's start with the board. Now, knowing Mourinho's history, they should have known he needs to be backed in order to be successful. And Mourinho saw Man United, richest club in the world, money to burn, where's the checkbook? Here's the divide. Now, Man United did back Mourinho, but not the way he wanted. Mourinho saw Pep chopping and changing players he didn't like at will and wanted the same treatment. Under the Glazers, Mourinho was never going to get back the same way Pep was. And the difference in this approach would escalate and be one of the reasons for the breakdown in that relationship. The performances. Now I can honestly say, watching Mourinho's team for the 2 and a bit seasons he was there in charge, during that time the team never played well for a full 90 minutes. Mourinho had Pogba, a player that could get into any team in the world, and he didn't know how to use him. He would play Scott McTominay, who was a trainee midfielder, as centre-back, despite having centre-backs available. His style looked set up not to lose, rather than to win, and that style would never change whether they were playing Arsenal or Crystal Palace. Going into his first season, he would regularly get outplayed by every team they faced. To put into perspective, Ole had got better 90-minute performances out of 95% of the same set of players within 5 games, a feat Mourinho had never achieved during his whole term at the club. Transfers. Now, as I touched on before, Mourinho wanted unlimited funds, but the problem was Mourinho's signings were not fitting into the system or having an impact like previous years at other clubs. Henrik Mkhitaryan would not get many chances when he arrived and could not perform under Jose's tough love methods. The same would be for Bailly and Fred. Once one of those players had bad games, they were never given a chance to recover, unless of injury. And in Fred's case, he would be shunned from the squad regardless of whether he played well or not. All this treatment of the new signings would increase the tension between the board and management, which segues me to my next reason, man management. Now, this is my main criticism of Mourinho as a manager, his man management. Now, I like listening to ex-players when they talk about their interactions in changing rooms. For example, we all know David Beckham got the hairdryer to the chin. But yet when Cantona gave that Crystal Palace fan the spinning bird kick, all the players were looking around the dressing room to see what type of instrument Fergie was going to fastball at Eric's coconut. And to all the players' amazement, Fergie did nothing. Point being, you can't treat everybody the same, because you won't get the same result. If it was that easy, we'd all be managers. Know your players, learn how they react to things, and get the best out of them. Now, I may be wrong, but I've only heard the same narrative around Jose and his treatment of players. And that is either it's my way or the highway. It's a tough love approach to all. Plus, this approach cannot work once you lose the respect of your players because they see you making irrational decisions only to suit your personal agenda, which I'll come back to later. Now, on the surface, let's forget football. Let's just say management in general. Yes, this approach is effective, but is it sustainable? I'd say no, which could be the reason Mourinho hasn't lasted longer than 3 years at a club. However, if you speak to all the Chelsea players the first time he was there, they only have high praise of him. And then at Inter, I remember seeing a video of Marco Materazzi crying when Mourinho was leaving, thinking this was a real player's manager. Fast forward then to having issues with senior players at Real Madrid, Casillas and Ramos, then Hazard and the physio staff at Chelsea, then Pogba, Bay, Shaw, Valencia, Martial, and the tea lady at United. I don't think an elite manager can treat all his players with the same energy. And while this may work and has worked for Mourinho in the past, it's now got to the point where his reputation precedes him in the opposite way to where it used to pre-Real Madrid. And finally, culpability. Now, during his whole term as Man United manager, Mourinho never took any blame for any of the team's lack of urgency in games, always having to come from behind and players consistently underperforming from game to game. He would make changes to starting lineups, i.e. midfielders playing as defenders, when defenders were available, and clearly putting his ego before the team by leaving Pogba in big games. But it was never his fault. After 2 lackluster performances against an average Seville side, where they were knocked out of the Champions League, Jose said, "I sit in this chair with Porto, Man United out. I sit in this chair with Real Madrid, Man United out." So this is not something new for the club. Now, those statements are wrong on so many levels, but my point is, Jose would rather throw the club under the bus than take responsibility for defeat. So what did I think of Mourinho? Okay, so the first season I was content. I wasn't happy with the performances. The Liverpool game at Anfield rubbed me the wrong way, but it was his first year and I saw a slight progression. But that was the best it was going to get, and by the Seville game next season, I was done. But my issue was also the board's lack of awareness to the things I saw Mourinho doing. His ego and stubbornness was out of control, but I was focusing on something I thought was more serious, and that was the abuse of power and unprofessionalism. Now, as a staff member of any organization, it's imperative you remain professional as you are a representative of the organization you work for. Andy Cole and Teddy Sheringham never liked each other. They never got along, but they knew once they crossed those white lines, nothing came before the team, and this is no different for a manager. Mourinho, in my opinion, crossed that line a number of times, but I will home in on one occasion especially. Let's rewind to January 31st, 2018. Wembley Stadium, Man United versus Tottenham. And yes, I was at that game. I remember specifically, as soon as I sat down, we were a goal down. But we had Homer Simpson in the back. Now at this point, Pogba and Mourinho were not on good terms. So when I saw them arguing with each other, I wasn't surprised, but I was embarrassed that our top player and manager were so open about their tension in the middle of a game when we were 2-0 down. It only gave the Spurs fans ammunition for banter. I'm pretty sure Mourinho told Pogba if he didn't do what he was told, he was going to get subbed. I say that because when the third official signaled for a substitution 10 minutes later, the look on Pogba's face was telling. So Pogba jogged off to the applause and amusement of the Tottenham fans. And I was in shock thinking, is this how you're going to treat your franchise player? You're not thinking what's in best interest of the team. You're trying to make an example out of him on the biggest stage possible, Wembley Stadium. A record-breaking attendance, just to stroke your ego. I knew that game was over once that sub was made, and so did Mourinho. Pogba was the only midfielder that could transition from defense to attack effectively. To add insult to injury, he took him off for his stepson Fellaini, who was not 100%, and limped off 5 minutes later. So there was a bit of karma in play there. But I'd seen Mourinho say and do things that were unprofessional or close to the edge publicly, but it was never towards his own team or staff. It was always other managers and everybody else. But once Mourinho got to Real Madrid, he started attacking his own, and it started to become okay for him. Seeing that incident firsthand rubbed me the wrong way. Then you start looking back at small things and come to your own conclusion. In my opinion, Mourinho started to hate United because he was not getting what he wanted in terms of transfers and grew jealous of Pep's ability to spend at will, something that the Man United board were never willing to do. This resentment towards the board trickled down into the players and staff, and Pogba became an issue because he was one of the players that wouldn't allow him to treat him like everybody else. Also, Mourinho didn't like Pogba's influence in the dressing room and power he had within the club because of what he could do commercially. And instead of getting him on side to galvanise the squad as a happy Pogba is a better team, as Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has proven, he's gone the other direction and made it a personal battle, putting his personal issues before the club. And this is what would eventually lead to his downfall. But the tough love, borderline bully philosophy was no longer his way of getting the best out of his players. It was a way to vent out his frustrations with the club, and everybody saw it apart from the naive fans and the board. Yes, the board acted, but it was far too late. By the time they did, considering I saw the signs in January 2018, and I'm not connected with any personnel at the club, so how did I see a sinking ship that early and they never? There's no smoke without fire, and the reports were coming out on a regular basis on Mourinho's watch. I will be very interested to see what club decides to take a chance on Mourinho, as every game Ole wins makes Mourinho look worse. Ole has not only got the results, he's got the same players playing to a better level than Mourinho ever did. The Special Ones brand definitely took a big hit with his last 2 appointments. Didn't you ever wonder why United players would play better on international duty than at their own club on a regular basis? It was widely reported that Mourinho called Pogba the virus. Now he's gone and looks back from afar at what Ole's doing. I wonder if he is humble enough to admit who the real virus was.
Caution. A virus has been detected.